Hi there. So since XAT is around the corner, I thought I'll invite a very special guest, someone who's fared exceptionally well in XAT. And since I didn't take the XAT in 2021, I don't really have any 2 cents. I don't have any cents to offer. And my attempt before that in XAT was abysmal. So I cannot claim to have any knowledge about this exam. But I have with me someone who is really done exceptionally well, and we will be talking to him. He'll be sharing his tips. So yeah, let's go with the first question. Why don't you introduce yourself, Saurabh, and tell us how you fared at the XAT?
Hi Milana, thank you for having me. It's really great to be here, and a big hello to all the viewers as well. My name is Saurabh Ratnalikar. I am a 2024 graduate of IIM Ahmedabad. I'm currently working at Tata Administrative Services. And in 2022, I sat for that year's XAT. I managed to score a 99.91 percentile overall. And in the VALR section, I scored 99.9959 percentile. So which, if I remember correctly, puts me at AIR 2 for that section in that exam. So happy to answer all the questions that you have about the XAT for me, and really great to be here again.
Thank you. That leads me to the next question, which is what kind of resources did you use for that, and how did you go about your preparation?
Right. So as far as the resources are concerned, I stuck to the coaching class material that one institute had provided. Not going to name them because I don't want to bias anybody here. But what I found is that having one set of material really helps you keep focused and streamlined. What happens is that if you have multiple materials, you're not going to finish this set and you're not going to finish that set of materials. And what happens is that your preparation can very easily become a khichdi. Now, in terms of how I went about preparing for the exam, it's not very different in terms of syllabus. Of course, there are additional topics in, let's say, the QA section, like trigonometry. And there is a different section in itself, the decision-making section, which is really infamous. And I'll come back to that in a bit. But honestly, the best way to prepare is to just give mocks, because not just these, but there are many other differences also, some subtle and some very direct. For example, you have the entire paper open to you the moment the exam starts, right? So we don't have sectional time limits. So how will you allocate your time from section to section? When do you decide to switch from section to section? You have to decide when you feel saturated. Okay, maybe I've done enough of VALR. Maybe let me go to DM. Let me go to the other section. And time management is again tested, but in a different way. So there are lots of elements, but primarily the baseline is just give a lot of mocks. I gave, I think, 10 or 12 mocks before the XAT 2022.
A follow-up question to that is, how is your strategy for XAT different from that of CAT? And so what did you do differently for XAT, and what are some of the differences between the exam ka pattern, and how did you tackle them in your preparation?
Yes, so just to pick up from where I left off, see, the XAT is different in many ways. Let's start with the pattern of the paper. You have part A and part B, and if I'm given to understand correctly, part B might not be the case at all for the incoming exam takers. So let me just focus on part A. So you have 165 minutes for part A, which is 2 hours and 45 minutes. You have no sectional time limit. So you have to keep in mind that sectional cutoffs are still a thing. So it cannot be the case that 2 hours into the paper, you are still left with a section that is completely untouched. So you need to balance answering the questions. What I used to do was I used to answer enough questions according to my estimates. That would be enough for me to clear the cutoff. And then I used to focus on maximizing my score with the section I was comfortable in, which for me happened to be VALR. Also, one thing to keep in mind is that there are 5 options for the MCQs. So mere guesswork, or brute guesswork rather, becomes that much more risky. You also have to remember that for every question left blank after the 8th question, so you can leave 8 questions blank without a penalty, but 9th question onwards, you have a minus 0.1. Don't let that play too much in your heads. It's okay if it's a minus 0.1. It's not that okay if it's a minus 0.25, which is the penalty that you get for a wrong answer, right? Now, if I look at the sections themselves, in VALR, there can be poems. So they may or may not be hard, but don't get discouraged Just don't be like, okay, here's a poem, so so it must be hard, so I'll give up on it. Try. You have the time. Trust me, for 75 questions, when you have 165 minutes, that's an average of more than 2 minutes per question, which really is better than a better deal than what you can get in most other exams, right? In the decision making section, my pro tip: please attempt as many questions as possible, because they can be a little bit random in what the correct answer might be. Just apply some common sense principles of business and personal ethics, and I think you should be fine. So I attempted all the 21 questions that were in the DM section. And for the QA and DI section, again, you have prepared well for the CAT. So no special tips from me as such, but again, just be slightly more careful with how you answer the questions. The only reason is that there are 5 options this time. So those would be my pro tips for giving a good XAT paper.
Okay, great. That leads me to the next question, which is what are the similarities? What is the overlap between XAT and CAT, and how did your preparation for CAT complement your preparation for XAT?
Yes, so I managed to touch upon this briefly, but let me just go a little bit deeper. Syllabus wise, like I said, 95% of it is the same. You need to learn 3 to 5 new concepts for the XAT. There is an entirely new section, but again, the base is the same. How did you prepare for the CAT? You gave a lot of mocks after completing the syllabus. Now here, for the XAT, your syllabus is also almost complete, and you're again giving mocks only. And you're carrying the same mindset as well into the exam. That is, I have to clear the sectional cutoffs. I have to make sure that I don't get stuck on questions. So basically, knowing when to skip a question is paramount. And see, at the end of the day, these exams are not just testing your aptitude at solving the questions correctly. They are also testing another very critical skill, which is managerial decision making, time management as well. So if given 10 hours, everybody would solve every single question. But how do you apportion the time? That is the critical skill as well. And those same core concepts carry over from your CAT preparation to your XAT preparation as well.
All right. Now, the most asked question, a question that I get asked a lot and I feel ill-equipped to answer quite often, is how does one prepare for the decision-making section? So, as we can see, you've done very well in that section as well, in addition to all the other sections. So, what is your mantra for cracking the decision-making section, especially because it is unique to XAT? So, how did you approach that section?
So it's always decision making, isn't it? The most infamous section in XAT. But let me just guide you on how you can perhaps do well, safeguard yourself, or even maximize your score. Who knows? So you have to remember, when there is a question which has 5 options, the penalty for a negative answer is minus 0.25 and the reward for a right answer is 1. Imagine you answer 5 questions and only one of them is correct. The result is that you still have a net 0 score. So if you calculate the probability, your expected score after answering 5 questions is going to be positive. So why not answer all the questions if possible? I answered all 21 questions. So that's to start with. Answer all the questions if possible. Now next, please use some common sense. You have either business decision-making questions or something that's related to ethics or morals, or it can be a mix of these two as well. So there can be other verticals, but at the same time, it just boils down to a decision that you have to make, which has to be legal, which has to be ethical, and which should not be problematic in general. So let's take an example. If your business is doing badly, you have cash flow issues, and you're struggling to pay your employees. And if one of the options says that embezzle shareholders' money so that you can pay your employees this month, that is clearly a wrong answer. So you should be beginning to see that some options are just very clearly wrong. Eliminate them. That increases the odds of you answering the question correctly. Some questions can be pretty close. So ethics, because it's a gray area in some respects, can be a little tricky to navigate. So in those respects, you have to navigate the section a little carefully. You have to understand the difference between the options which are very close. So what could happen is, for example, you have an ethics question which says that, let's say, an employee of yours is stealing office material. What should you do with him? And one of the options says that you should publicly reprimand the employee and not fire them. The other one says that you should privately reprimand the employee and not fire them. Now, what would you do in this case? So the difference here is between a private reprimand and a public reprimand. See, with a public reprimand, what can happen is that the employee's morale can be seriously damaged, not defending his actions, of course, but the employee's morale, when it is damaged, it can have a spillover effect to the entire office. The office forms a negative opinion of this worker. If the worker is doing well in business terms, then the office environment is derailed. With a private reprimand, in my opinion, the employee still knows that now you've caught him. So he will be much less likely to do it. And you can, of course, say that a private reprimand in this respect would be better. So that's just a very rudimentary example, but it should get you thinking as to how to answer these types of questions. So yeah, that's the decision-making section. It's all about just using your brain.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. It has been a privilege and an honor to have you over on this channel, and I'm sure your inputs will prove to be very valuable to anybody who's taking XAT this year or next year. And to my viewers, I hope this video is insightful, and I hope to see you again soon, another time in another video.